All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, denizens of the interwebs. I am kcStranger, finally back after 4 weeks. I've got a full slate of players with you this evening. We have got KyrianSalvar, Radiclus, aka Snake Lord, Braveshine, and Didjaman. And before we start, I do have a special announcement. For a number of weeks, I have been mentioning Tractor Blend, which I've recently learned is more correctly pronounced. Um, and I'm still going to butcher this, but Tractor Blonde. It's like French. But anyways, uh, and I've been naming him as a sponsor of this game for some time. Well, turns out he did actually make a specific financial offer. I met with him 4 weeks ago, and he actually delivered on his patronage of this game. Um, so, in recognition of his financial contribution to the Crystal Tomb, um, I wrote him a poem. Now, mind you, I wrote this in the week following meeting him, so there's one portion of that that's important. But I would like to record this rather silly poem for the record. So, this is, of course, an ode to Tractor. I offer thanks to Tractor Blonde and remember him most fondly. For many months I've called his name as the sole patron of this game. I met with him this weekend last, and to his promise he held fast. For when I told him what he owed, the full total was bestowed. So from his praise I'll never break, I'll thunder on like his namesake. His wit and charm I will acclaim, and fly the banner of his fame. Thank you, Tractor. By the way, Tractor Blonde, this explains one of the lines. Realize I forgot to mention this. It's basically a tank. So, just throwing that out there.
Hey there, everybody. This is kcStranger. Unfortunately, once again, for episode 99, I lost my player's audio. It was a very fun session, one that I believe I repeatedly bemoaned losing during episode 100. Nevertheless, wanted to come back here with a little summary of what happened, um, to just sort of preserve for the record the events of the session. Um, so last time we picked up with Cain meeting with his father, the Jinn Esselhere. They walked out into a garden and were a little bit antagonistic at first. Cain obviously realizing that his father could have contacted him at any time and feeling like Esselhere sort of left him out to dry, as it were. Um, Nevertheless, Esselhere finally did convince Cain to let him see the silver bangle that Cain wore. And bringing them together, he was able to summon Tristana, Cain's mother, who, though a wind elemental now, did take a somewhat human form. Tristana explained that Esselhere's ability, which Tavrith had brought Cain there to seek, actually degraded his memory. And so, very likely, the reason Esselhere couldn't remember Tristana before uh, was just actually literally that this ability he was going to teach Cain had caused him to lose his memory of her. Um, Tristana did also embrace Esselhere. They shared a tender moment. Cain was perhaps a little bit uncomfortable, but Tristana also explained that Esselhere had always been a drifter, always been a bit of a deadbeat, honestly. Didn't want to be tied down to anything, but nevertheless, she stayed with him because she vastly preferred what he had to offer to remaining in the sort of small nothing town of Westeros, and there at least Cain said he could relate to that. So after the reunion, Cain did finally learn this ability from Esselhere that he came to seek. Esselhere actually pushed him off of the cloud at the edge of the garden, and the ability, which Esselhere described as the power to undo mistakes, Cain invoked, and that actually let him sort of rewind the clock, if you will, and not trust his father by going to the edge of the garden and being pushed off. Um, Essel here smiled, realizing that it had worked, explained a few things to him. And it was around this point when Essel here let another bombshell drop, namely that Cain had a daughter. He had sent one of the Genasi who sort of minded to his business to Einongrun to check in on some of the children who remained there, perhaps the children of partners, shall we say, who he felt particularly fond of. And Cain learned that he had a daughter named Zaina who is in the care of his uncle Sean. Needless to say, Cain drank heavily that night, um, as did Essel here to some extent. Uh, Essel here did check in on the rest of the party. He decided to give a magic ring to Cain, but Cain, being off drinking, wound up giving it to Fallon instead. Fallon trolled Cain with some smoke spiders from his pipe that could produce images of magical beasts or of beasts, and eventually sort of chased back Cain to his room so he could sleep. Cain did wind up getting quite the hangover. Another thing that happened, I think, the next morning actually was that the party got stocked up on magical +2 ammunition. Many archers in the palace, so that was dispensed. The party decided to remain in Esselhere's palace for a few days to rest up. Both Colleen, who had repeatedly invoked an ability causing her to be exhausted, was yeah, a little bit worse for wear. And also Cain wound up with quite the hangover from his night of drinking. I believe he double crit failed his saving throw against that. Um, at any rate, so yeah, so there was some time for things to happen. Colleen mostly just rested, um, allowed for sort of double dipping on taking away the exhaustion based on her mostly doing nothing the entire visit. She did find time, however, to prepare Dispel Magic and read the note that was shown to her by Fabrizio. So this was the invisible scroll that she had to disenchant in order to read. There was, in fact, a note on it from Innis, essentially, and actually, let me go and read that. It said, "Hello, traveler. Welcome to this most special of places. I know not whether you came here for adventure or avarice, or from the direst of need. Nevertheless, you have found your way here, and are first to find this note. I love all creation, and so whether your motives be pure or not, I believe your achievement should be rewarded. Light and darkness both have their place. Pray only that you may play the part for which you were created. With deepest affection, Innis." And with that, the scroll evaporated in a bright yellow flame, after which Colleen was left with her own magic item, a dark wooden staff bound in rope, the top of which twisted to form a gnarled reaching hand, and from it were hung the 3 bones and the feather of a great owl. And this was an item called the Staff of Ambition. Fallon and Quizmiligus, meanwhile, decided to go try to convince Essel here to smoke gnome salts with them, and that in fact did happen. The scene that played out was rather amusing, and so it's very unfortunate that you're not going to be able to hear, at least not very well, the reactions of the players because we all had a good laugh over this one. But nevertheless, I would like to go ahead and play the vision that all 3 of them shared in full.
All right. So you all stare out into the night sky together. You all fade into the tender embrace of drugs. The stars glow brighter and expand until the sky is a uniform sort of dim glistening. And that's when you realize that um, Esselhere himself, without actually changing his physical form, has seemed to expand as well, to almost become one, if you will, with the air around you. You, for a moment, you grow curious and want to investigate what's going on, but again, the drugs, which lay heavy on your brain, tell you to just let it happen. And that vision carries you to a faraway place. Years ago, now, and you watch as a large, powerfully built man walks with a slender woman with black hair, uh, pale skin, and carries her away into the sky. You watch as a small, nothing looking little town disappears on the horizon behind them. And they wind up at a small cabin, basically, on a mountainside overlooking the ocean. A door closes, a dim light is lit, and mercifully your vision does not follow you inside the cabin. And there's this moment where you're wondering how this is going to continue. Are you actually going to see how the sausage is made? And that's when you see a creature appear over the backside of the cabin. A large single central eye and a round body with tentacles coming all around it, with eyes on them as well. And you notice that its tentacles are holding plates, glasses, and a pitcher. It floats towards you. Yes, welcome to the show tonight. I'm Barty the Beholder. Would you care for a lemonade?
All right. So as you can see, that was a bit amusing. Barty the Beholder has become a bit of a well, I don't player favorite. I guess I'll put it that way. Anyways, so Fallon also met with Esselhere the next morning. He gave Esselhere back the ring that he'd given to Fallon, encouraging Pops to give Kane the ring himself, which Esselhere eventually did. After that, I believe Fallon just found his way to sort of a basement entertainment room, which actually had a rudimentary sort of bowling alley in it. So yeah, inventing bowling. Uh, Quizmiligus, meanwhile, spent most of the next day on one of the various balconies of the palace, writing the story of his journey in the Book of Shadows. Um, Wound up spending most of the day doing that, but afterwards received a response from the entity on the other side of the book, um, basically thanking him for filling that entity in and indicating that they should meet. Kane, meanwhile, talked with Saffron, sort of trying to understand better uh, what life was like in the palace, maybe learn more about Genasi society and what they were like. Actually, it occurs to me at this point, I forgot to mention, Kane had learned that his daughter was actually a full human. As it turns out, the children of a Genasi and a human can be either Genasi or human. Suffice to say, Saffron wound up giving Cain sort of a small booklet that apparently was sort of a combination history of your people and your changing body that was given to young Genasi in the palace. Apparently, they had frequent need of such a thing, and had sort of organized it. Cain also asked Saffron to help him find the person who had learned of Cain's daughter, um, who, again, quick reminder, currently on Einangrun, which is very much threatened at the moment. Saffron did finally identify that Genasi. His name was Talib, and she brought Cain back to meet with him, and that is where we left off. And that's about it. So, thank you all for listening, and hopefully I won't screw up the audio again in future weeks.